still find the people that don't go to college get married very young still.
Well,
So there's a split.
I'm seeing even in urban America, young people, again, getting married young and starting to have children. We're seeing kind of a baby boomlet, if you will. And I see quite a few young people getting married.
Sure.
So is this starting to wane, do you think?
Or if there's a swing back, I don't. Well, I think what's happening, honestly, is not one single trend. It's multiple trends. And so now we're seeing a generation that it is as normal statistically to get married and have a kid at 21 as it is at 31 or in your late 30s. So you just have this tremendous spread. So if you take the average, you'll see the average marrying age going up. But what you're actually seeing is a diffuse, like in the 50s, you'd see a very tight grouping of when people got married and had their first child. And now it's simply all across your 20s and 30s. So you're right, there's counter trends, and I think there'll be a little bit of swing back as this next generation of young women looks ahead to the women that went before them and delayed marriage, and some missed the opportunity to have children, and some didn't get married. They may make different decisions. They may think, I'm gonna put that idea of getting married and having children into my late 20s, at the latest. Getting married is a very difficult thing to decide to do on one's own, and what I mean by that is to not have the social pressures that would lead you to making that decision. And if you think back in the 50s, you had the parents very involved in a young adult's life, the church, all the friends getting married, all that social pressure sort of helps you make that decision. When you're 25 years old and the world is basically saying to you, get married whenever, and there's the tax issues, but I don't think any 25-year-old thinks about the tax consequences. But it says, figure it out whenever. Get married, live together, date, but you figure it out. And it turns out that getting married is actually sort of requires a little bit of that social pressure. It's a difficult decision to make. You want some people to say, this is a good time to do it, or that's a good person to get married to, And everyone's very hands-off these days, especially parents, I think, of 30-year-olds. They don't know what to say to their 30-year-old when they're single and trying to figure this out. They're not as, in their kids' life as other generations were.
So then do you think it's appropriate then for the government to encourage marriage through its policies?
I'm a big advocate of marriage, and having gotten married after the book, I don't think it's something that people should skip. I think it's a very important institution. I think there's actually great news about marriage within this delay trend, and the great news is that later marriages tend to be the ones that are surviving longer. They already statistically can see that. So I think to delay marriage, become a fully fledged person, both in terms of emotionally and perhaps financially, then to join your life with another person when you're in your late 20s, I think is going to strengthen marriage. I mean, the generation before us didn't do a lot for the institution of marriage. I mean, there's massive divorce rates. Huge discontent within the family. And I think ultimately, even though we appear to be avoiding marriage for a period of our lives, we're going to rescue the institution. Because,
as you write, you're elevating the idea of marriage because you're actually looking for the person who will be that right person, even if it takes some time.
That's right, and we're not doing it, as I say, I think in that early article, we're not making the marriage decision as someone, as a high school senior would make the decision to go to college, but sort of like, oh, that's what I'm supposed to do next. We're making the decision more studiously. When we go to the altar, we're actually, in a way, we're turning away from this group of friends that has sustained us in a way for that period of life. We're actually giving something up and devoting ourselves to the family unit. And I think that added sacrifice and that added intentionality of it is actually going to make us, commit more to marriage as opposed to just sort of drift into it.
So ultimately, after writing this book, and I assume receiving thousands of emails afterwards, did you come away with the conclusion that these urban tribes are delaying the institution of marriage or providing a safe haven for people who would be doing that anyway? And need some friends and some support in the meantime? Well,
out of all the stories that I collected, I ended up with a sort of mixed impression. I mean, I could look at certain urban tribes and think, what you're doing is just an extension of your college years, and that's not that healthy. It's a lot about drinking and dating and partying, and it doesn't seem to be helping you become a fully fledged adult. And I look at other tribes and just see these remarkable people helping each other out during a very interesting social transition period. I worry also, at the end of the tribe years, you reach your mid-30s, which is delaying marriage a long time, how easy it was for people to extricate themselves from the tribe, to get out of the tribe and to turn towards a romantic partner and say, let's have a family. And I did notice a lot of stories of the tribe being resistant to letting you go. The tribe is almost like another, romantic partner in your life that gets jealous of someone else coming on the scene. And I worried about, people in that situation. It's hard to change gears, and it's easy to go on living a life of, in a group of friends.
So can you have a suburban tribe or a rural tribe, or is it really something that's unique to cities?
You can, but again, the marriage delay happens more in cities because it has more of those challenging careers that go on in the suburbs, and the smaller towns tend to be the ones where people get married earlier.
And what did you find out about the adage that this is happening because women are just too picky?
Oh, that's just part of the anxiety. That's all those stories of women are too picky, or men have suddenly become jerks, or that's all the sort of sitcom answer to the question, and it's much more complicated than that. It's much more interesting, and but a lot of the answers to these questions that people had in their minds came out of TV shows like Friends or Seinfeld, where people were just living these sort of ridiculous lives, and I think the humor of those shows came out of the anxiety that surrounded this sort of suddenly new period in the human life.
Well, there's such a focus in the entertainment industry on those actors and whether they've gotten married yet and whether they've had children yet. I almost think sometimes the baby boomlet now that we're seeing is in part due to people watching this focus on these entertainers having children at a late age, and how cool it is. I wanted to ask you a question about something you wrote that about our generation. You and I are not. I'm slightly older than you are. I won't say how much older, but within the same generation, I think. And you wrote that you think that our generation has had no sense of shared mission, no notion that we were a generation chosen for some higher purpose.
Yes.
I kind of understand what you mean, being your age. There was, Vietnam War was over,
yes.
World War II was over.
That's right.
But I guess I would wonder if you need that kind of external threat in order to do something good for others. I mean, or to motivate you to help others. I mean, why do you need that shared mission? And
right.
maybe we have it now with the next generation, with global warming, with the war in Iraq. It seems to be motivating.
That's true. Yeah, absolutely. Global warming in particular seems to have some energy behind it. I was making that point largely just to point out that the amount of freedom this, sort of Gen Xers and Gen Yers have, both in terms of, the things they think about, the things they do, the way they think, the way they dress, and so forth. And I think in the 70s or 60s, the 70s, the baby boom generation came of age. You had this sense that there was this tremendous freedom out there, and we're all doing something new, and it's all exciting. And you look back at it, and what you see is a much more homogenized, stylized freedom, that everyone was acting like they were free, and yet it's that old Steve Martin joke where you all chant together, "We are all free." That it's actually not freedom. It's a style. It was a style. It was a style at the times.